Well, Dipti's here as well, browsing through the papers. We're talking about Saudi Arabia, aren't we? This historic decision to allow women to drive. It seems incredible saying that in the year 2017, doesn't it?
That's right. The message might be more, it's about time, really. No surprise this story is making the front pages of pretty much all the Saudi newspapers. Let's look at one daily paper called Okaz, a daily website, which says on its front page that under King Salman, women are finally able to drive. They call it an historic decision and say Saudis will never forget September 26th, the day that women were allowed to drive. Now, on the front page of L'Orient Le Jour, which is a Lebanese French language daily newspaper, they call it a, quote, small revolution in Saudi Arabia.
You found one piece, though. This is in the New Yorker, talking about scepticism, really, about this decision.
Well, Robin Wright, who's the author of this piece, she pens a very cynical article in the New Yorker, which looks at the ulterior motives behind this decision, and it's well worth a read because it's really interesting. This decision comes at a time when women are a, quote, burgeoning social force in Saudi Arabia, and the monarchy is under pressure to modernize the country. Perhaps more cynically, Robin Wright also argues that the Saudis might be looking for some good PR because this decision coincides just as the UN is set to decide whether to create a Yemen war crimes commission this week. Saudi Arabia obviously has come under scrutiny for its role in that war. And the cynicism has also spread to Twitter. One user has tweeted an old cartoon noting the irony that Saudis are allowing women to drive just as we usher in an era of driverless cars.
Very sneaky. Back to France now. President Emmanuel Macron, he's delivered that speech presenting his vision of a new reformed federal Europe.
Le Soir, the Belgian paper, is talking about this on their front page. They say Macron lights up his European ambition. The French president gave a rousing speech at Paris's Sorbonne University yesterday, arguing the merits of a multi-speed, more efficient Europe, a rejuvenated Europe, you might say, at least according to the British daily The Independent, rejuvenated EU to which the UK could return. That's their spin on it. Also noting a Brie entry. Clearly, we're not done with those cheesy catchphrases. The British conservative daily The Times says, unlike his predecessors, Macron is undertaking domestic reforms to impress the Germans, get them on his side in pushing for this multi-format Europe. He's banking on the mojo that brought him to power. That's what the author of this article says. Macron is hoping to do what his predecessors couldn't do.
Critical piece now. This is the conservative US website Fox News.
That's right. John Moody, who's one of the executive vice presidents of Fox, calls Macron the anti-Trump in this piece. President Trump, I quote, represents stronger national defense, tighter border control, lower taxes, and made-in-America manufacturing. Macron is the polar opposite of this, and his message sounds like a, quote, best hits sound mix by Al Gore, Barack Obama, and George Soros. John Moody, clearly for John Moody, that's not a good thing.
Another Donald Trump story now. He's copping quite a lot of criticism for his handling of Hurricane Maria that, of course, has devastated Puerto Rico.
Well, the more than 3 million people who live in Puerto Rico are American citizens, and they deserve better. That's a message from this writer in the Miami Herald. Fabiola Santiago writes a piece that really lashes out at Donald Trump for spending the weekend essentially attacking the NFL and pretty much neglecting the disaster that's taking place after Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. All his tweets so far about Puerto Rico are, quote, downright judgmental and victim-blaming. That's what Santiago says in this piece. All this while food supplies are dwindling, water is undrinkable, and the heat is stifling. Now, Trump has announced that he'll be traveling to Puerto Rico next week. It'll coincide with 2 weeks since a hurricane hit there. Just like George Bush paid dearly for delaying his response to the victims of Hurricane Katrina, this writer from El Nuevo Dia, which is a local paper in Puerto Rico, says Trump must reach out to the victims of Puerto Rico at the risk of this becoming his Katrina moment.
And the Independent is looking at America's history with its neighbour, isn't it?
This is really interesting. It's more of a feature piece, but basically they say America's been slow to respond to Puerto Rico because it's never cared about the island. That's a sad message from the Independent. At best, America's parenting of Puerto Rico has been half-hearted. They're U.S. citizens, but they have limited involvement in what goes on in the U.S.
And finally, back to Twitter, because the papers are talking about it as well as Stephen. This reaction then to the fact that it's going to double its character limit to 280.
That's right. Stephen mentioned that Twitter is hoping that it'll bring people back to Twitter. At least for Vox, it's not. They say Twitter has just gotten twice as bad with this doubling of its character limit. The Vox writer hates the change because Twitter is about brevity. I quote, "It's supposed to make you think about removing words to make your thoughts snappier and more concise." So clearly in favor of a 140 character limit. Let's end with a tweet from one user who, actually one of many users who are wondering what this all means for Donald Trump, arguably the tweeter-in-chief. Close your eyes. Imagine Trump using Twitter. Now imagine him using it with 280 characters. Close Twitter. They're definitely not getting this user on board.
No, exactly. I think it depends on the tweet. Some tweets you can do very short. Others, you try and read somebody's tweet and you have no idea what they're saying because it doesn't make enough sense. All right. Thank you very much, Tipsy. Tipsy with the papers.